Sled dogs by nature want to go. Hook them up to a sled, and that's what they do. Getting them to stop and rest requires some training. I tagged along on just such a training mission.
It's important that they know how to rest.
And we'll check out a cool innovation at the UP Boat Sport and RV Show. Stick around, it's time for discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
The Upper Peninsula is home to a number of sled dog races. The UP 200, Midnight Run, Jack Pine 30, Tequamanen, Iron Line, the Copper Dog, and they draw racers from all over the country as well as internationally. And of course, from right here in the UP. I talked with some of the folks from the Mushing Club at Michigan Tech about what's involved in training for a race.
So right now we're gonna check our dog's feet, which is come here, Triforce. Come here, Triforce. So, which is really important running sled dogs because healthy feet are important because just like driving a car, you can have all the power in the world, but if you don't have good tires on there, it doesn't really translate. So to check the dog's feet, we take them up like this, and we take them and we can splay the feet. And what we're kind of looking for here is these dogs are bred to have very tight feet. So you can see his feet are pretty tightly webbed together, but what we're gonna look for actually is between his toes like this. So it's going to be pretty hard to see, but in between his toes, we're just looking for any cuts or anything like that. And you can kind of look at the pads too, and I'll splay them and I'll kind of look to see if he has any reactions or anything like that. This dog has really nice feet, so he doesn't have any cuts in him right now. He's got two good front feet there. Then we usually take him from the back like this and just take the backs and do a pretty similar thing. Splay him right between there and look through the pads. Kind of look right in there, kind of reading almost like reading a book. Just push him right open like that. And it's hard to see, but he has good feet. There's no cuts, no good examples of what we're looking for here. But usually with the dogs like this, it's usually more common that they're gonna have splits on their front feet because when they're pulling, they're really pushing off their front feet pretty heavily. And that's really where they get most of the cuts in their front feet, or they get injuries in their wrist to shoulder. That's usually the most common. So he's all good to go. He's not going to need any boots or anything like that to protect him today. And this is going to be our lead dog for today, Triforce, a nice 10-year-old, nice dog.
One piece of that training includes being able to stop for a period of time to rest the dogs. And yes, they train for that.
Today we're gonna go on a train and run, kind of in a checkpoint style like we do for races. So we're taking 8 dogs, 2 older dogs and 6 younger dogs that haven't really got a checkpoint style rest like this. So basically what that means is we're gonna run anywhere to 2 to 3 hours with 8 dogs on a trail in the woods, and then we're gonna take about a 3-hour rest where we rest them on the gang line. We're gonna give them some food, rest them, put straw underneath them, and then after about 3 hours, we're gonna take off again and do another 2 to 3 hour run somewhere in that time span. So that's pretty similar to the styles of races that we're trying to do with this club with Tom. Like the Midnight Run and the Bear Grease 120 are kind of those style of races where we do that. So this is a great experience for the dogs because the younger dogs really need this because they don't really learn how to rest, and they need that experience before they race because it's pretty important or they're going to be stirring all night. So that's pretty much the plan here today. Get some good experience on the young dogs.
Okay, so we're gonna melt down some meat for these, or thaw out some meat for them. Rest them here. We'll get them watered right away, but while the cooker is running, we're gonna give them some little snacks here. This is just ground up beef. It's got a decent amount of fat. Unlike us, we need sugars like glucose to work our metabolism. They use the fat, right? So this is gonna recharge them for the next run, and then we'll give them some water right after this. So we went about 22 miles, which is about half of what capable of actually doing in one sitting. They're actually almost capable of more, but there was a lot of technicality to this trail, a lot of ups and downs, and a river crossing, and so they got a good workout in. And a lot of these dogs are younger. There's a lot of experienced dogs too, but a lot of them are pretty young. So that was a good run from. And really what we're working on is how to recharge after a workout like that. So all I'm doing is heating up this water. It's an alcohol-based fuel. You just pour it right in the bottom here. She got all wet, but so we'll just kind of thaw that out. A lot of the races that we do, the dogs stay in harness and on the gangline until the race is over. But when you stop, it's important that they know how to rest. It's time to stop running, it's time to lay down and sleep in the straw. Now, maybe 3 of these dogs have actually done that before, so I wouldn't want to get to a race and have half my dogs not be able to rest. It'd be up and barking, waking all the other teams up and causing a bunch of chaos, and then they're not recharged for the next run. Hopefully some of the older dogs lay right down and kind of show them how it's done. These guys up front, and they know when it's time to lay down. Usually for a race you get 1 bale of straw for your team and whatever else you can bring. Their coats are so dense. They've got thick undercoats mashed with these guard hairs, perfectly fine in sub-zero temperatures. We like to rest them on the gangline just because then they know they have to run again. They know it's not over. It's kind of a process, but if we're just here and we're quiet, and they'll kind of get the memo and lay right down. if you're running the races like the Iditarod, you have to know how to do all this by yourself with no handlers. Races in the Midwest, some of them will qualify you for the Iditarod, but a lot of them you're able to drive your truck and trailer right up to the checkpoint and have a whole fleet of handlers there to help you.
Right now we're just watering them. This is just the baited water. So there's really not much meat. If you actually look in there, there's really not a whole lot to it. Just a little bit of meat and fat just to give it a little flavor, because you know they like to have a nice meal like that. But we don't want to give them too much, because if we really, hey, no tipping, buddy. If we give them too much right now, after a couple hours they'll run and they'll just have too much food in their bellies, and they could get sick or stuff like that, right? Especially just for a shorter run like this. During a race situation, depending on the race, you might give them a little bit more than this. For example, if you're doing like a UP 200, you might give them, if you're on like a 5-hour rest where we're only doing 3 to 5, you might give them a full feeding or half a feeding with a little bit of dry food, maybe a little bit more meat. But just for this situation, we're just watering them because they really haven't gone too far. It's all yours. All yours, buddy.
Christian and Stephen are both members of the Mushing Club at Michigan Tech, the only known collegiate mushing organization in the entire country. While the dogs rested, we had the chance to hang out by the fire and chat about the club, dogs, and mushing.
So we're going to sit here for about 3 or 4 hours. We'll take back off again. Well, Stephen and I run dogs with the Mushing Club at Michigan Tech. It's an organization that basically gets students into sled dogs, and we base ourselves out of the Otter River Sled Dog Training Center with Tom and Sally Bauer. And they offer experiences to the club members and experiences to the general public in the form of tours, much like this. So they'll take you out in the woods and bed down the dogs and cook you lunch and do stuff like that.
So this year's been a pretty good year for the club. I know you're following us at the Midnight Run. I had 2 teams in that, and we had 3 teams in the Copper Dog. Tom ran the 150, and we had 2 teams in the 80 and a team in the 25. So it's been a pretty successful year, and looking forward to the future too. You know, we're going to be doing more races, more checkpoint style races like this, and I think that's what Tom's looking to get back in the UP 200. So these are a lot of potential dogs that he could be having on this race. So that's why it's really important for us to get out here and checkpoint style camp with them like this, because you know a lot of them need this sort of rest and get used to it, because a lot of these young dogs aren't really resting when they're supposed to rest, and when it comes showtime, it's important that they do.
You know, a lot of people, I think, misunderstand what these huskies are bred to do. You know, you throw a golden retriever a ball and it goes after and runs and brings it back to you. Like, it's kind of just innately doing that, right? And these dogs innately run, and that's what they're bred to do. That's their purpose, and they love to do it. I would argue that we actually have a deeper connection with our huskies than your average everyday person might have with their pet dog. The reason that is because we depend on each other and we rely on each other. They rely on us for food and training, and we rely on them to get us to the finish line. I'd have to imagine that the same flies for like people with hunting dogs. It's all the same. They're working dogs, not pets. But it doesn't mean that we treat them any less than a pet. In fact, a lot of these dogs get more attention than your average couch potato dog. We're trying to preserve a sport that is probably one of the most archaic forms of transportation. People have been mushing for 10,000 years. Back in the gold rush ages of Alaska, they brought over different dogs from the lower 48 and bred them to the native Inuit huskies or wolf-like dogs that were up there, and created a bigger, a little bit different looking version of the same dogs that we're running today. Now we've, you know, crossbred these dogs with greyhounds and German short-hair pointers and other dogs other breeds that give them the drive and the stamina and the speed that make them good at racing. But it's still all the same concept.
I'm from Covington, Michigan. Grew up there, and a pretty cool thing is when I was about 8 years old, I actually rode in a dog sled, and you know, years later I come here to Michigan Tech, and I come out and I get involved with the club, and just because of my love of dogs and stuff like that, and talking to Tom and Sally, and Tom's like, yeah, I gave a ride down there in Covington once, 5 years ago or so, and I'm like, oh, Tom, it was more like 10. I was like, Tom, I rode in your sled when I was a kid, you know, and we were talking about it, and I was able to talk to my mom, and she got some pictures of me riding in his sled. Both my sisters did too, and there's pictures of some of his old dogs and stuff like that, and so it was a pretty cool connection. So I think that was definitely one of the things, even as a kid, I was reading about dog sled and stuff like that, and it seemed like such a cool sport and stuff like that. So it was really neat that I got to come here and experience the opportunity through Michigan Tech. And it's not something I don't think I would have ever done if it wasn't for the school and the club.
You know, a lot of people that haven't been on a dog sled before, they see the start of it maybe at like the Copper Dog 150 or the UP 200, where the dogs are just squealing and pounding and it's super loud, and you almost need earplugs because you can't, you know, because they're so loud. But once you get out into the woods, it quiets right down. All you really hear is just the little clink of like the necklines and stuff like that. Quiets right down, and all the dogs are just one fluid motion, and that's what's really cool about it.
The first time I ever got on a dog sled, it was just like such a rush of adrenaline, and it's just like how Christian was talking about. It's so quiet, you know, and there's all these idiosyncrasies about all the dogs you can pick out, and you know, there's 63 dogs at the kennel where we are, and you know, I can kind of walk up to each dog and pet them, and they're a little bit different and stuff like that, but not really too much. But when I run each of the dogs, you know, each dog is so different and has such a unique personality, and it really allows you to bond with them and form a deeper connection with them. And I think just like being on a sled is just like a combination of athleticism for me, you know, with managing dogs. I like to describe to people that I'm like I'm like the coach of these dogs, you know. The dogs are the real athletes here, but they need someone to kind of use them in a way that's they're gonna get the most out of them. And you know, just running the dogs, stuff like that. We always talk about racing and all this stuff, but for us, especially the way this club works at Michigan Tech, is racing is just an avenue for us to meet other people and connect. You know, we're not trying to win any races. We're not trying to do anything like that. We're just trying to take our dogs in a different place and meet other people and run them on different trails and connect with other mushers and show off the sport. You know, yeah.
The UP Boat Sport and RV Show is once again back in Marquette. Boats, campers, motorcycles, bicycles, ATVs of all sorts, and a wide variety of vendors filled the Superior Dome. I ran across an awesome UP innovation that I couldn't help but pass on.
I came up with these bags, and a new invent had helped me on them. They're for storing ice in your cooler. You can put your ice in the bag, put it at the bottom of your cooler, and put it, you know, all your food and stuff on top. This ice has been in here for over a day, sitting out in the open, and it's still carrying ice. If you go camping for a weekend, you usually stick a bag in there. By the time you get home, it still has ice in it, and your food's dry. It has a carry handle, so you could use it for a day pack cooler and fold it up at the end of the day, right? So you don't have much carry. There's a valve spout on the bottom to drain the water out. Basically just folds up as an airtight container, basically like a dry bag. So, you know, at the end of the weekend, you can put your bathing suits in there or whatnot as well. Basically being airtight, it'll keep that ice in there and keep it cool. We've used it many times. I have a lot of friends that have bought them and they love them. They'll go, you don't have to spend money on ice every day. Your cooler stays dry. I mean, look at the bottom of the cooler, completely dry. And these bags have been sitting in here for over a day. We have the 20-liter size, that'll fit a big bag of ice. 10-liter fits a small bag of ice. You can slip the bags right in there. And this is a smaller one, 5-liter bag. That's for, you just stick that in there and a 6-pack of pop or beer or whatever you want to carry along with you for the day. And then they fold up nice and small, right, when you're done with them. If you dump your ice out and you're done with it, you stick that back in your backpack.
Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to check out 906outdoors.com, where you'll find the 906 fishing report, TV6 weather, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.